Hello, everyone. Thank you again for watching and listening. And I thank you for this opportunity once again to share a thought with you in this podcast. I call this podcast How the Concept of Elitism in the American Culture is Bringing the Nation onto the Brink of Existential Crisis. The elite in the American culture's attitudes and behavior, bringing the nation into a brink of existential crisis. You see, we are living in a world where it's filled with political distress, social injustices, financial uncertainty, with increase of natural disaster, and a morally confused world and cultures. Meanwhile, Christianity, with its biblical authority, not only specifically and accurately foretold our time and the things that will happen, but also implicitly explain what will happen in the near future. We witness institutional chaos, natural disaster, war, sickness all across the globe. Moral decay are rampant in every culture, in every society. The question is, do these cataclysmic events point to a more critical point in a history of mankind that is looming and coming at us in the near future? One of the things we all are fully aware of is worries. Excessive worries has consumed our lives from inside out. These worries result in sickness, insomnia, like paralyzed fear. Worries with his companions, with fear, damage our relationship, even confuse us, our understanding of ourselves. Of course, there are certainly no limit to the number of things over which we can choose to fret, stew, and stress over. Our children, our health, our finances, our relationship, our material possession, and of course, the unknown future. Worry has become an epidemic in the world and in our culture, as well as in our individual lives. So many people agonize so much about missing out or protecting what they have. They have burned up considerable amount of time and energy that could have been utilized to create a more hopeful and fulfilling life, not only for themselves, but for the loved ones and for others. Worry means to agonize over disturbing thoughts or being anxious over what might happen, which result in fear, uneasiness, and even sleeplessness. Worry over what has happened, worry or feeling anxious about something that only might happen. You see, worry is like a strenuous, exhausting exercise that builds no muscles. And many people in the world, and many Americans, go through the entire lives constantly choking on worries. All their happiness, success, joy have been choked up out of their lives by constant fretting, which leave no room for anything else. But then again, The Bible teaches that real hope can only be found in a personal relationship with God. Peace, a peace that we so desperately yearn for, cannot be found and will ever reach by human doing and achievement, particularly for the things that lies ahead for planet Earth. We're living in a world that is devoid of moral education. The younger generation are growing up in a morally inarticulate, self referential society, an immoral world. The United States of America was built on certain principles, one of which is inherited socioeconomic status is nothing more than a circumstance of the past that is to be rectified by their true destiny. And the US used this ingenious ideology to propel it forward in itself as one of the five great power nations of the world socially, economically, and politically. This principle attracts countless of immigrants who fled their countries of origin to escape a predestined fate. After over 2 centuries or so, the strategic self-promotion the United States have done an inconceivably excellent job at persuading people all around the world from every walk of life, from every continent, with the promise of achieving life built upon the foundation of hope and opportunity. As it has been noticed in recent decades, however, it's becoming increasingly difficult for the vast majority of Americans living in the United States to achieve this Thomas Jefferson American dreams underpinning by a person's right to pursue life, liberty, and happiness. It is no secret, my friend, that the cost of living in the United States of America has been exorbitant for quite a while now. And the pace at which this has been increasing is historic. To make ends meet, Americans are now more than ever electing to shift the expense to credit cards and other line of credit. American households currently hold $11.67 trillion in debt. That was old story. A 25% increase from 9.31 trillion they held prior to the COVID pandemic, COVID-19. The young generation, the millennial in particular, are struggling to buy homes despite taking on this debt. In fact, that the median age for a home buyer in America today is about 47 years old of age, 8 years older than the median age prior to the financial crisis. To add salt to this wound, the average American currently had just about $5,300 in savings, solidify that this picture will likely to worsen given the current political environment in Washington, D.C. The two dominant parties to work together seems to be impossible to address the social and the economic issues of the nation. What is the secret behind true wealth creation? The world, as we know it today, in the 21st century, has entered into a transitionary period, teetering on the edge of a new digital economy. With this fast moving technological pace, we have witnessed quick, lucrative return when trading stock or cryptocurrency compared with the return on properties ownership. This makes it more effective to chase the 10 to 1,000 time return in capital markets instead of buying your first home. And although this might seem intuitive on the surface, this is only applied to certain demographics. In an alternate scenario where someone holds a modest job making honest living, some Americans do, and reside in an affordable city where one's dollar are best spent investing in a property they live, given that their point is likely accessible. Buying a house is the only investment you can easily pull off with almost 90% leverage, meaning your upfront investment costs are subsidized. Conversely, buying stock requires you to front 100% at the time of investment. Now, I am not an economist, and these are the study I have reviewed for this podcast. And it's fascinating to see that. In a contemporary society, the level of difficulty in achieving the American dream has skyrocketed. This picture perfect life is visually synonymous with happily married couple with two children, a beautiful home, and a white picket fence. That's a dream. However, the reality of this is vastly different today. The latest numbers suggest that this generation of young people are no longer getting married, buying homes, or having children as previous generation. Wealth disparity is at all-time high, and division continue to growing in all over our country, particularly in our nation capital. And so the American dream is in peril. Are you dreaming? Maybe you are. While the vast majority of Americans are feeling the pain of the Federal Reserve tight monetary policy, the nation elite are not. After a certain point, more money does very little to change the quality of life. I just read a report last month. One of the richest person in the world, Elon Musk, lose about $200 billion in some type of investment. And I forget what the report was about, but I remember read that. The rich own the credit card company that the poor borrow from. The rich own the banks that pay out fraction of a percentage of yield while making enormous profit via the capital market activities. The rich are also friends and lobbyists of the lawmaker that determine the fate of the majority of this country. The American dream wasn't designed to make you rich. Its narrative spun by a quaternary compromise of the nation elite. It is a strategic and intricate device crafted to keep you where you are. It is a donkey and a carrot model built to serve the system, unquote. While you are too busy chasing financial freedom through hard work and dedication, the American dream is adding more weight onto your saddlebag, unquote. In 1998, the Wall Street Journal and NBC News asked several hundred young Americans to name the most important value in their lives. Work ethic led the way in 1998, naturally. After that, large majority picked patriotism, religion, and having children. That was in 1998. 21 years later, the same pollster asked the same question of today's 18 to 38-year-old members of the millennial and the Z generation. The results were published in the Wall Street Journal, showed a major value shift among young Americans. Today's respondent, over 10% point less likely to have children and 20% less likely to highly prize patriotism or religion. 21 years later. The nuclear family, religious fidelitas, if we want to call it that, and a national pride, family, God, and country were the holy trinity of the American traditionalism. The fact that allegiance to all three is a precipitous decline tell us something important about the evolution of the American national and cultural identity in the 21st century. Let me repeat that again. The nuclear family, religious fidelitas, which is fidelity, and national pride. The word is family, God, and country. These were the holy trinity of the American traditionalism. And the fact that allegiance to all three is in precipitous decline. Tell me and tell you and tell us something very important about the evolution of the American national and cultural identity. In recent years, there has been one conversation that dominated the social dialogue. Why have Americans become so sad? Why we are so sad? Why we are so unhappy? The rising rate of anxiety, depression, and suicide have been well publicized, as have the rising death of despair from drugs, alcohol, and suicidal. But all the statistics are similarly troubling. The percentage of people who say they don't have close friends has increased fourfold since 1990. The share of Americans aged 25 to 54 who weren't married or living with a romantic partner went up 38% in 2019 from 29% in 1990. These are studies. You can review them yourself. A record high 25% of 40-year-old Americans have never married. And some still, some still living with their parent. More than half of all Americans say that no one knows them well. The percentage of high school students who report persistent feeling of sadness or hopelessness increased from 26% in 2009 to 44% in 2021. We are facing an existential crisis. American law and politics have been shaped by many traditions and perspectives, including the British constitutionalism, the Enlightenment liberalism, and the classical and civic republicanism. When adding Christianity to this mix, provide a more far-reaching picture of the diverse influence on the American cultural structure makeups, including its legal system and jurisprudential thoughts. While it is important to identify and examine the source of influence, it is equally significant that we should not overstate nor should we ignore other perspective. Trust in the American institution is collapsing tremendously and remains steadily in decline. It is not just you, it is not just me. Our moral foundation is collapsing. Personal responsibility is a bygone story. Things like, as we just mentioned, trust, hope, optimism, believe in Judeo Christianity, the belief in the existence of God, it's all in the discard and disallow. Newspaper, the criminal justice system, TV news, big business, and Congress have confidence of a fewer than 20% of Americans. Now, there are two solutions we can look at. We can say American must restore its moral foundation and personal responsibility, and the country is in desperate need of ethical and moral foundation leaders. I need to repeat that again. I need to repeat the whole thing again. It's not just you, I said, and it's not just me. Our moral foundation is collapsing. It's in disarray. The lack of personal responsibility, trust, hope, optimism, belief in Judeo Christianity, the belief in the existence of God. It's all in the discard and disallow. Press, newspaper, the criminal justice system, television news, big business, and Congress have the confidence of less than 20% of the American people. Very sad commentary. And so there are two solutions we can look at. One, we must restore, the nation must restore its moral foundation and individual personal responsibility. Two, the country is in desperate need of moral, ethical foundation leaders. One of the greatest things about the United States of America was its optimism, the sense that anyone, family, or individual, if we work hard and play by the rule, would bequeath a better life to his or her children. That there was a real hope in place because America was there. Sure, the nation had its share of problem, but there was a sense of trust and believing in each other. How this quality have evinced, it is hard to stuff and to sub-stack. Some things are very clear, my friend. Someone say, unquote, if Congress did its job, American would have more confidence in its government and its governing body. If elected officials of both parties and the courts didn't refer to each other as opponents and derogatory remark, demeaning terms, there would be more confidence in our elected leaders. If the medium and the press, or rather, if the media and the press stop serving its worst partisan and work for all, more American will trust the press. And again, some things are very clear right in front of us. The two incongruent American have always coexist, and this throughout the research engage in ultimately hopeful story of our nation divergent rule. The American Enlightenment to our raging political division also demonstrate that reason, analysis, and historical perspective are the only antidote to irrational and political discourse. And so there's a question: did the hope and the vision of America really ever exist at all? Or was it all but illusionary? Was it all an illusion? In searching for a fresh and a distinctive perspective on the recent corrosion of our civic life, many Americans take the impact, the negative impact, very personal and feel propelled to search for a new way forward. Today's battle reflects the fundamental divergent vision of a nation that emerged from prominence and the principle that shaped it. The United States may be rooted in the Enlightenment era, but its origin in dual America is a product of two distinct Enlightenment extremists and temperate. Young Americans under the age of 30 account for more than one third of this nation, worshippers in only three major religions: Islam, Buddhism, and Hinduism. This reflects both the increase in non European immigrants since the 1970s and the decline of a larger Christian denomination in the latter half of the 20th century. This also reflects the sheer increase in atheism. Millennials are nearly three times more likely than the baby boomers to say that they don't believe in God. 6% versus 16%. If you think that Judeo Christian principle and the value are irreplaceable, a keystone in a moral arc of Western society, these, fact, these facts will disturb you, and they should. See, many people are not aware of that. No other worldview has grown faster since the earlier 20th century than atheism. Exact number are hard to give, but probably, and some have postulated, between 5 to 10% of the world population is now convinced that there is no solid evidence for the existence of God. Of course, in the Western, these numbers are higher, and in particular realm of life, such as academia, the number of atheism usually surpass 40%. I have watched countless of debate from some of our prestigious university and colleges. It is amazing how people will stand and applaud when an atheist dare to stand before the world and express the disbelief and to dare to present evidence that there is no evidence to support the existence of God. You see, dystopia is a country where everyone is unhappy, with the lowest income in the world, the least freedom, the lowest life expectancy, least social support, and most corruption. They're actually the worst country in the world. In this country are there. Whatever happened to the American idea of the pursuit of life? Dystopia, as it happened, doesn't actually exist except as a reference for the country in the World Happiness Report, which is a global collaborative survey that ranks the Earth's happiest and unhappiest inhabitants. And the United States isn't anywhere near as miserable as dystopia, but they may be inching closer. In the first year the World Happiness Report was published in 2012, the United States came in 11th place. But the most recent report found the US down 8 happiness rank to the 19th position. In reality, Americans aren't particularly sad compared to the rest of the world. In fact, they're objectively among the happiest people from a scientific point of view. Yet the United States ranked 19 out of 149 countries after all. But whatever it is, it's because the US is the wealthiest country in the world, or because of that relentless optimism Americans are known for worldwide, or widely held belief by Americans that America is innately different from the rest of the world. And scholars and politicians have wondered why this country is not at the top of the list of the most happiest people in the world. See, we always convinced that we were exceptional, and now it seems to many around the world to see American, and I quote, we're exceptionally in our stupidity more than anything else, unquote. The statement was said by someone named Carol Graham, which is a senior fellow at the Brookings Institute, a think tank specializing in social science. That person is an expert in measuring American well being. We're the only country in the world prior to COVID 19 where mortality rate were growing up rather than going down, Graham says. And that was due to deaths of despair in less than college educated middle aged white. Suicide, drug overdose, and liver disease from alcohol are typically known as a death of despair because they happen more in group with little hope for improved economic and social condition. Graham research tells us a story of economic upheaval beginning long before the pandemic hit, bolstered by racist history that has unexpected outcome, as well paying blue collar job for white men in America, manufacturing disappear, and Walmart moved in, jobless, low education, addiction, and despair. It's what's follow. Meanwhile, non-white Americans who spent centuries battling discrimination in America workplace, economic, and society build informal network of support in an extended family or religion institution. They have prioritized higher education as a way to improve their lives. Whatever happens to the American dream, the group that most believe hook, line, sinker. You work hard to get ahead. You don't want government support. Government support for loser are for loser. All of a sudden, need collective support, need all sort of things, and doesn't have those natural and formal social linkage. The studies continue. And because American is still the majority of white, American and happiness, American happiness continue to dwindling. This isn't the first time social scientists have pointed out how American economic as a root of American unhappiness. Mahali Csikszentmihalyi, a psychologist at the Claremont Graduate University who was known for his work on happiness and creativity, wrote back in 1999 about capitalistic measure of our own success. Nowadays, the logic reducing everything to quantifiable measure has made the dollar the common metric by which to evaluate every aspect of human action. Because our sense of selves in America hinge on how much we are worth in the market, he argues. We expect and depends on material reward to make us happy, and they don't. Mr. I continue. Studies after study have shown that monetary gain does not bring emotional well being. Higher income can increase happiness temporarily, but people always, often, quickly adjust by moving their personal benchmark upward. What is a social story? Economic, however, may not tell the entire story of the American discontent, tied up in this classic narrative of hard work, material payoff, and more recently, workaholism is a reliance on the individual, not, not on the group. In one study on the US, Russia, Germany, and East Asia, researchers find that those in culture that value collectivism versus individualism tend to be more successful in pursuing happiness because of the emphasis on the social engagement. The richest country are not happiest. The healthiest country are not always the happiest one either. The happiest country are the one who do have the highest level of whole range of things, says John Halliwell, an editor of the World Happiness Report and professor of emeritus of the Vancouver School of Economics. They include, especially, a willingness to trust each other, to work for each other, and to come together in time of difficulties. These are the happiest country. The United States, on the other hand, is one of those most unequal rich country and the most unequal of the G7 nation, according to the peer review research center. Inequality, which is the World Happiness Report user as one of the strongest measure of social trust, play a big role in happiness. Access to healthcare and education is also unequal, he well says. Quote, despite lots of people efforts, it probably is less equal than it was 50 years ago, and that has consequences, unquote. And so we need to look at how greed and the elite corrupt the American dream. In 1900, there was a quote in New York Post, and I quote, beware resentful multimillionaire, for they will destroy the American dream. That, in a nutshell, was the warning issued by an article that appeared in the New York Times in 1900, unquote. That was in a nutshell. Caution readers that discontent millionaire form the greatest risk to every republic. The problem, it states, was that multimillionaires are very rarely, if ever, content with a position of equality. But if the rich were to be treated differently from other Americans, it will be the end of the American dream. Suddenly, the individual pursuit of prosperity, the self made man, the success story, we're all familiar American ideal as the immense popularity in the second half of the 19th century of Horatio Alger books about impoverished boy rising to middle class. Prosperity does attest, but the Alger ethic, as it best called of a reg to rich meritocratic bootstrap, was not associated with anything called the American dream until much, much later. Instead, the early iteration of the phrase described political dream of the framer of liberty, justice, and equality. The problem for the United States has always been how to reconcile the three. Liberty is intention, against both justice and equality. One person's freedom to pursue property or power soon infringe upon principle of social justice and, and democratic equality. If the concentration of wealth was an un-American dream, then preserving the American dream will mean resisting individual success at the expense of others. In 1923, a German historian and a philosopher by the name of Oswald Spengler published his famous two-volume historical analysis in one volume entitled The Decline of the West. The Decline of the West. Spengler analyzed the various civilizations of the world history, arguing that each went through a time of flourishing followed by a period of decline. His central argument was that Western civilization was in a period of decline. He wrote in German, and the term translate decline could actually translate downfall. As civilization decline, they gravitate to dictatorial power that preserve what they cherish: stability, e.g., stability, order, and security. But once marked the core defining element of the civilization, religious beliefs, ethical standard are all abandoned, and the civilization embraces a raw rationalism, skepticism, and power. Arguably, Spengler was controversial and provocative, but he wrote during the period of World War One and the rise of the Nazism in Europe, all of which influenced the general pessimism. Nevertheless, his overall perspective about history influenced, among others, and Toby Henry Kissinger and Samuel Elitism says. And let's repeat once more the statement I said at the beginning of this podcast as I went through this note that I have written to share this thought with you. The question and the statement I made is very important. To me, it's thrilling. Even repeating it gives me the thrill. How the concept of elitism and the American culture is bringing the nation into a point or a blank of an existential crisis. Are you dreaming? Maybe you are. If you are, let me encourage you to wake up and pay attention to what's happening in the nation, to what's happening in the world, to what's happening in your community, and to what's happening in your home, and most importantly, to what's happening in your life. I wish I could tell you a more positive outlook of what's going on. My goal and my intention is it's not to make you feel good, but it's to encourage you to be diligent, to share knowledge, and to bring to your awareness, to take personal responsibility, and to be vigilant, as I said, to pay attention and to take personal responsibility for yourself, for your family, for your loved ones, for your friends, and for your community. I am a very optimistic individual. I believe I am, but I'm also a realist. I am not going to looking at reality and pretend it doesn't exist. I'm not going to look at what's happening right in front of me and trying to avoid it or pretend it doesn't exist. So I believe deep in my heart, I am a very optimistic person. That's why I'm sitting here sharing those thoughts with you. But by the same token, I'm also a realist. I accept what is, and my reaction is the most important thing. No matter how blank anything may appear to be, my reaction to it, it's equally important. So, my friend, as you listen to this podcast, I know you learned something, and I hope you ready and prepared to get up and take personal responsibility for yourself, for your children, for your family, and eventually to be a force for good in our country as well as in our world. This is the podcast conversation, mindful conversation, as we call it, mindful conversation for critical time. It's a sponsor or a product of In Such Innovation, small organization reaching out to help people with all sort of problem, mental, emotional, social, psychological, and using this platform to continue to enrich people's life. And I share those thoughts with you, not to feel good about myself, nor to appear that I know everything, but simply to bring awareness to myself and to you as I read, as I study, as I look at this research, as I read this book, those social scientists, economics, apologetics, all of those people, I feel a need to share those thoughts with you. And my intention is very pure and clear to bring awareness, to motivate, and to share thought with you that will encourage you, that will motivate you to take personal responsibility for yourself, for your children, for your loved ones, for your family, and eventually be a force for positive, for good in the world. Until the next time, my friend, listen. I want to thank everyone for listening. And if you haven't subscribed, do so to stay tuned with our future conversation. Again, this podcast is a production of In Such Innovation. Once again, thank you for listening.